Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Dr. Amin from Toronto. Today we're going live and going to talk to Nathalie Niddam. Amazing. I'm so looking forward to this talk. Exciting. First of all, hi, everyone. Let me know if you hear my voice and you have my sound. And if you just wave and let me know that you can hear me. And of course, if you have, as usual, any questions, do not hesitate to drop it in the comment or in a question bubble. And we're going to talk all about longevity with Nathalie today, how to stay young but healthy. So that's more important for us. We want to be healthy, proactive, and not reactive. So that's good. You're hearing me. So let me just go and invite Nathalie. Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, Nathalie. Good to see you.
Nice to see you
And
too.
you, yes. Thank you for coming here today. It's a great pleasure to have you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Lovely. So if you don't mind to introduce yourself to everyone here, and then we will dive in.
Okay. So my name is Nathalie Niddam, and I host a podcast called Longevity with Nathalie Niddam. And podcast, I think we're probably almost five years in now, and so we talk about biohacking, longevity, all the things. And the podcast really started because I became very fascinated with compounds called peptides and bioregulators, and so the podcast became a way for me to get people who knew a lot more about them and still do, to talk to me, kind of thing. And so but I trained as a holistic nutritionist. I went back to school about 15 years ago to do that. And also got interested in epigenetics. And so now it's mostly the podcast. I host a membership community. And yeah, here we are. That's what I do.
Amazing. I love your podcast. I listened to
Thank
some of
you.
your talks and it's just so amazing, fascinating.
Thank you so
So
much. Thank you.
much insightful, yeah, information. So I was thinking maybe we can start with lifestyle strategies, how they can promote our general well-being and optimize our longevity. I mean, we keep hearing about different lifestyle, nutrition, sleep, stress, but I love to hear your perspective on and
Mhm.
your thought on how they can help us.
Sure. So the first thing, I just see a comment down here
Mhm.
asking what kind of doctor, and I'm not a doctor. So right out of the gate, I'm not a doctor. I'm a holistic nutritionist, and I've been, kind of learning from people. So whatever I say here is not medical advice at all. And if you have medical questions, you're going to have to speak to your doctor or another doctor about it. So just to establish that.
Yeah.
In terms of lifestyle, I just actually finished recording a podcast with someone else 5 minutes ago. And there is no biohack, there is no strategy, there's no supplement that can really replace things like the foundations. Nothing can replace getting sleep, moving your body, getting exercise, eating a whole food diet, getting out in nature, mitigating for exposure to artificial light at the wrong time, mitigating for non-native EMF exposure, getting rid of toxins. Like, we have to, all that whole foundation work has got to be addressed if we're going to live a long, healthy life. And then once we've done that, even living in community, like having people around you who support you and who you support, like, these are the hallmarks that we see in the most long-lived people, right? If you look at centenarians today, I don't know that any of them really set out to be a centenarian. They set out to just live their lives. And when people talk to them, they will find, I mean, I think Jeanne Calumet, which is who was in France, I mean, she drank and smoked until I don't know if she passed away, it was very recent, or she's still kicking. But, you know, this is a woman who drank and smoked her entire life. And yet she, you know, when asked, like, what is it that kept you alive this long, she talks about things, topics around community. She talks about eating, and I don't even know that she focused on her diet that much, but her diet would have been a more whole food diet. Like, we can't forget that these people grew up in a very different world than we exist in right now, right? And also, we come across people sometimes who seem to have super efficient detox pathways so they get away with stuff. So I'm not suggesting that anyone should be smoking or drinking as a longevity strategy, but I think that getting to those foundation pieces, helping the body to clear toxins, putting in the right inputs, getting the right amount of sleep, moving the body, getting in nature, all of those things have to be non-negotiables for us to live our longest, healthiest lives.
Absolutely, 100% I agree. Yeah. So, I mean, for example, sleep. I thought maybe more focus on perimenopause and menopause women in this journey, and that then we see how much their sleep has been affected, and that hormone deficiency state affects everything. Body is inflamed. So, how can we address again, getting back
Yeah.
to lifestyle? So, how can we help or advise? What are your thoughts on this group age of women with so much inflammation, insulin resistance, and sex hormone deficiencies?
Well, I think the most obvious answer is to work with a practitioner, a knowledgeable practitioner, and consider hormone replenishment. I interviewed a woman, a female doctor. She's a double board certified OBGYN. Her name is Dr. Annika Becca, and she's brilliant.
Yes.
And she doesn't talk about hormone replacement. She talks about hormone replenishment. And the reason she does that is she said, you know, we're restoring something that we had, right? So I think that as we move into a world where our expectations around aging have really changed, right? We expect at the age of you know, like, if you how do I put this? If you watched the show Golden Girls years and years ago, right? Those women were my age. They presented very differently than I present to you today. So our mindset around aging, our expectations about how long we're going to live and how we're going to live, that we are going to remain vital, and that our brains are going to stay healthy, and that we're going to keep doing physical activity and sports, and we're going to thrive. We're not just going to survive. That means we have to up the game. Right. So we're going to do, like, for me, we're going to tap into things like hormone replenishment, because I'm not going to restore my hormones to where they were when I was 20. That would not make sense. But can I keep my hormones at a level that sustains me and allows me to age well and maintain my health and my function so that I can get the things done that I want to get done? And when it comes to sleep for women at this stage of life, a lot of it comes down to hormones, right? And even insulin resistance comes down to hormones. That menopause brain women talk about is a combination of a loss of estrogen, which is very important to the brain, as well as an increase in insulin resistance. So we have to be flexible. We have to be open to the possibility that the way that we lived our life before isn't going to work for us now. So we may have to change our diet. We may have to, we may have to do things differently. We're going to have to learn to manage our stress, because we've been running like a house on fire for years and years, whether it's been building your career or chasing your small children around. The paradox is you may have, and especially now because women are having children later, we may have young children in the home, but we may also have aging parents that we need to take care of. So you're getting caught. So instead of being able to wind down, you're actually being asked to ramp up, and you may even be working on top of that. So you're going to need every tool available to you to support your body so that you don't continue to perform, because you're tough and you're a woman and you're going to deliver to the people who need it around you. we have to make sure that you don't do it at the expense of your health, so that in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, you wake up one morning and you're dealing with a health crisis.
So what to do?
Hormones.
How to
Right?
prevent that?
Yeah. So I think part of it is replenish your hormones. I mean, you know, how to, if you're in that situation where you have young kids and you're working and you have aging parents, is can you find ways to get help? Learning to ask for help, I think, can be a really powerful tool. Can you find, and help can come from many different places, right? I mean, if your children are old enough, they can contribute. We carry this mantle of thinking that we have to do it all by ourselves. And we, with any luck, maybe we have a partner who can assist us. Maybe our kids are old enough to assist us. Like, can you get help? And you have to prioritize your self-care. Like, you have to. It's just like when you're, you know, God forbid you're on a plane that's going down, you're going to have to put your oxygen mask on first. So you're going to need to, so you're going to take care of those hormones so you can get the sleep. Give yourself the time to sleep, right? So that don't be thinking you can stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning and get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and keep doing that day after day after day. It's going to bite you. Instead, go to bed earlier, maybe get a little bit earlier, get your exercise in. If you're maxed out and you're barely hanging on by a thread, going to do CrossFit is not the right answer. Maybe you need to do something more restorative. Maybe you need to do yoga. Maybe you need to walk outside. Like, think about ways to really take care of yourself. So we need to be able to carve time for us in this craziness, right? So the fundamentals of having someone look at your hormones for you, changing your diet so that you're adapting to a diet that is more appropriate for someone who's less insulin sensitive. If you have the time and the bandwidth to do heavy weightlifting, that's going to help to restore insulin sensitivity, right? So understanding what is the time that you can carve out for yourself and what's going to be the biggest heavy hitters for you in terms of how you're going to use that time for yourself.
And how to set boundaries. That's again, I think, something that we almost forget, many of us. So these are very, of course, pillars of lifestyle strategies important for us, but then we move to peptides. So I love to hear your, I mean, the peptides. What is peptide? First of all, because many of us not sure what peptides are.
Yeah, so peptides is, you know, it's a very interesting area. It's an area that, you know, a lot of people think is very new, but it's been around for quite a long time. Peptides are small proteins, really, in the simplest way to explain a peptide. And everybody has heard of insulin. Insulin is a peptide, right? So we there are peptides that are signaling molecules. So these are things like BPC 157, thymosin beta 4, thymosin alpha 1. And then there's another category of peptides that I tend to talk about a lot called bioregulator peptides. These are very, very tiny peptides, and they are able to interact directly with your DNA and help to restore to restore function and to help the DNA to produce proteins that helps to restore and rejuvenate at a cellular level. So somebody just wrote down there, they just wrote pineolon. Actually, above that, somebody wrote Premarin. I would say that bioidentical hormones are probably, for most people, going to be better than but even Premarin actually in the studies showed benefits
Yes.
versus no hormones, right? It
Yes.
may not be optimal, and in some cases it might be the answer. For the most part, bioidenticals, I think, are going to be much more
Most,
powerful.
but as you mentioned,
Safer.
the study, yes, study
Yeah,
showed all-cause mortality reduced by even
even
Premarin.
Premarin.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes.
On the pineolon, pineolon's really interesting because it's the central nervous system bioregulator. It's great for the brain and the central nervous system. A lot of people think of pineolon, and what they're really thinking about is the pineal gland bioregulator, which is actually epitelon, which affects the pineal gland. And the pineal gland manages our it helps to regulate melatonin production, it helps to regulate circadian rhythm, it helps to kind of have a kind of a global hormone balancing effect. It's also beneficial for the immune system. And it activates an enzyme called telomerase, which is an enzyme that maintains telomeres on the ends of the DNA. So epidolon, interestingly enough, might be helpful for, or endolutin, the pineal gland bioregulator, might be helpful for women who are at that transition of life, because it might actually help in some ways with sleep. And what we might do in a case like that is we might say, well, what if we use the ovarian bioregulator and the adrenal gland bioregulator, because the adrenals are getting stressed. They're having to pick up the slack from the ovaries for hormone production. So what if we kind of took care of that whole chain? So there's, the bioregulators are a very interesting tool to kind of help to smooth the edges. It's not medication though, right? It's not going to replace your hormone therapy. It's not going to replace a lot of other things, but what we've seen is sometimes as an adjunct, it can be very helpful.
So we're supplementing.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So how to, for people who not know how to have these peptides, where to go, how to talk to someone about peptides, and what are these peptides? I mean, of course, we hear about the GLP-1s and GIP-1, so that we're going to next.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, peptides, the good news is, I would say 2 years ago, it was really hard to find anyone to talk to about this stuff. There's now, I think I think last weekend, there were at least 2 conferences only for practitioners working with peptides. So we have governing bodies like A4M educates practitioners on peptides. You've got the Clinical Peptide Society that's educating practitioners on peptides. There's a company called New BioAge that had a conference last weekend. We have the Institute of Functional Medicine that's now bringing speakers in to speak about peptides. So increasingly, I think if people, I'm sure that A4M has some kind of a directory, or the Clinical Peptide Society, you should be able to find a physician that works with peptides. I mean, if you listen to my podcast, I'm constantly looking for and interviewing people, physicians and practitioners who work with peptides. So getting guidance on peptides is a good idea. I see far too many people who go out and hear about something and they run out and they buy it and they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to use it. It's, there's a storyline out there that says, well, peptides are fragments of proteins that are naturally occurring in the body, therefore they're safe. I mean, yeah, they're mostly safe, but everything you need to have context around everything. And so you brought up the GLP-1s and the G1Ps, and these are peptides that were taken by drug companies and turned into a drug, right? So they were modified from the way they naturally occur in the body so that they have a much longer half-life. And so therefore are able to exert their influence over a week instead of over minutes. Right. And they can be very, very effective. They can be a very powerful tool. I think the challenge with them is that it's too easy for people to just use those and get the outside benefits that they're looking for, which is fitting into smaller genes. But they're not really paying attention to at what cost and what steps you need to take to mitigate the downsides, right?
Are peptides safe for people that have had breast cancer?
It depends on the peptide, right? So I would say the bioregulators, for the most part, are pretty safe, but I would always work with someone like a physician, who is familiar with these things, because your case is going to be different than others. But definitely there are actually immune peptide bioregulators that have been studied to help people immune system recover after breast cancer treatment. So they can be, but it always depends on the individual. Like breast cancer is a big topic. There's different types. There's breast cancer driven by hormones and whatever the case, and also depending on the treatment that a person had. So whenever we've had a situation where there's been a major imbalance in a person's body, when we're trying to bring it back into balance, you really need to work with someone who has a sense of what those imbalances are and what levers are these tools going to pull that are not possibly going to tap into those imbalances.
Especially again, going back to perimenopause and menopause women, that estrogen deficiency even affects our gut, the microbiome. So that's again a very important part. I think we have to focus. And then we go the discussion about detox, how to work on detoxification pathways and keep them open and help our body to detox all the toxins in our environment, or breaking down all these medications, drugs, and even peptides. So, what about the detox? Or how do you work on the detox with patients or clients?
And so I'm not doing much one-on-one work these days. So just to be clear on that, I'm, kind of more in a bit of an education role than that. But I would say the detox pathways, understanding people's genetic predispositions, understanding, knowing how to read their blood work and symptomatology. Do they need understanding if you need methylation support? Everybody's walking around saying, oh, I am an undermethylator, or I have methylation. What's the word that they use? I've actually trained myself not to use that word anymore. Like a defect in their methylation. You don't have a defect. You have a particular profile for methylation, and you need to understand it so that you know how to watch for the signs that it's actually expressing, and then what to do to balance it, right? So taking glutathione, taking your methylated Bs if that's what you need. Some people need SAMe. Like, it just depends on how we need to balance it out. And then when it comes to actually helping detoxification pathways, look, I mean, I'm a big fan of supporting the liver because the liver's in charge of detoxification. So what can we do to support the liver's ability, right? So we're not detoxing the body. We're saying, how can we support the pathways of detoxification that the body has in place? So, there's a company called Level Up Health that makes a really, really great supplement called the liver complex, and the liver complex has a beautiful stack of ingredients that help the liver, that supports phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. I like to pair it with something like TUDCA, which is very beneficial for the liver as well. And then for a lot of people, a lot of us, our gallbladder maybe is a little sludgy, it doesn't work that well. Ox bile can be a really nice addition to that kind of liver stack. But then things also like rebounding, right? So moving the lymphatic system, getting the lymphatic system moving. Like, you can support the liver all you want, but if the lymphatics aren't moving, then things are still stagnating, right? So whether it's rebounding or even bouncing up and down on the spot, like, getting into a sauna. If you resonate with cold plunging, deliberate cold water exposure can be really, really beneficial. Otherwise, so sweating with the sauna, and then making sure, and this is such a chronic problem, is constipation, and making sure you're not constipated, because if you're not moving your bowels properly, you're going to be holding on to and reabsorbing toxins. So so what do we need to do for constipation? Well, we need to be eating the right types of fiber. We need to be hydrated. Maybe we need some extra magnesium. And I'm not even talking about magnesium oxide here. I'm talking about more absorbable forms of magnesium. That liver stack that I talked about can be very beneficial for people who are dealing with constipation. Taking digestive enzymes can actually help with that as well. So we can see that, what are the pathways of detoxification that the body uses, and how can we support them so that you have better elimination? And that alone is going to be wildly helpful for all the issues that we're dealing with.
So I keep hearing, I mean, some of the questions all the time, my patients asking me about how much protein, how much water I have to drink, how much sleep is good, exercise, what to do, how much is good, what type of exercise. So I love to hear your thoughts on a little bit nitty gritty of those little lifestyles again.
Yeah, so how much sleep is a really interesting question. There was, people tend to talk about 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I would say that some people can do with 6.5 if you're a good sleeper. right? So there's a difference between being in bed for 9 hours and being in bed for 7 hours, because the person in bed for 9 hours, if they wake up feeling exhausted, they're not sleeping properly. I can tell you right now, they're not getting into deep sleep. Maybe they're a mouth breather. Maybe they snore. Maybe whatever it is, if you're not waking up restored and refreshed in the morning, then you're not getting good quality sleep. So hacking your sleep, and that can be something like making sure that your sleep hygiene is good, that you're getting off your screens. And getting off screens to 1 or 2 hours before bed, it's not just the light. Light definitely is an issue, the blue light, but it's also helping your brain to calm down, right? As long as we're engaged, whether we're scrolling on Instagram, we're reading the news, we're watching a movie, whatever it is we're doing, you're keeping the brain awake. You want to do like what you did with your baby, right? If you've ever had a baby, what do we do? For that last 1 to 2 hours before bedtime, we create sleep rituals. We give them a bath. We don't throw them in the air. We read them a story. We might sing them a song. Like with our little children, we try and train our children to get into a parasympathetic state so that they can wind down and have restful sleep. Well, we need to do the same thing for ourselves, right? And then when it comes to exercise, if we're talking about women in perimenopause and moving into menopause, you want to do enough exercise, but not too much. Your body is right now probably going through a lot of changes and quite stressful. So doing too much is not going to serve you. I am a big fan of probably shorter workouts, not fasted, particularly because that's another stressor. Um, but but you have to keep moving your body, right? So finding what really works for you and resonates for you and is going to be really helpful. I think that if you can get your head around getting a trainer and lifting weights, I think lifting weights is very powerful for women going through menopause. And then do something that makes you happy, right? Um, do whether it's fitness classes or whatever the case may be. I know that there's some experts out there that really poo-poo HIIT or some of these gyms like F45. Yes, F45 on its own is probably not going to be enough, but if it brings you joy and you're in community and you get out there and you move your body, who's to tell you that it's not the right thing? Like you gotta, what's important is getting into it, right? What was the other things? You asked me a few things like specifics.
Yes, stress. Again, stress is another thing that I see a lot with anxiety and everything that's going on. How to lower that stress and cortisol in this, especially perimenopause and menopause time. Someone is again asking about two questions here before we go back. Is about magnesium, what type of magnesium, and also about the liver supplement. You mentioned that someone was asking about the name of that.
So sorry, what was the first one? Sorry, I got distracted.
Magnesium. What
Magnesium. So
type of magnesium?
I use magnesium from a company called Biooptimizers, and they have 7 different kinds of magnesium in that one supplement. So depending on what you bind the magnesium to is what tissue and system it's going to have an affinity for. Personally, I have found that blend of magnesiums to be one of the most helpful out there. So I use it. I make my parents have it and I recommend it to my client, like it's definitely my magnesium of choice. The other thing the liver complex is by a company called Level Up Health. And they might be out of stock right now. I'm not sure. It's a very popular supplement. And I see someone here saying that Tutka and Oxbile boosts the CYP3 enzyme and could speed up the metabolism of a lot of medications. Look, if you're on a lot of medications, you're going to have to sit down with your doctor or whoever it is and have a conversation about taking supplements, because definitely supplements work and they do move things in a different direction. I don't know that Oxbile necessarily boosts CYP3A4. I think it's more about moving bile. But if it does affect that SNP, then definitely I would say, and you're taking a bunch of meds, then you're going to have a conversation with your doctor, because maybe you shouldn't take those supplements, or maybe you could reduce your dose, because if it's going to make it more, if it's going to make you more sensitive
Mhm.
to them, it's like drinking grapefruit juice when you're using statins. You can't do that, right? Because statins have been dosed assuming a certain uptake and processing by the liver. Grapefruit is going to upregulate one of those SNPs as well, and mean that you're going to suffer from toxicity from too much statin based on the dose you've been given.
Mhm.
Uh, the company is Level Up Health. So lvluphealth.com. They're actually on my website. If you go to Nat Recommends under supplements, you'll find it there. I've recorded a couple of podcasts with the formulator and the owner of that
Mhm.
company.
Someone is asking about sleep aids or supplements apart from melatonin and magnesium.
Mm. So again, I just had this conversation with someone. I would say that sleep supplements is it's a very personal thing,
Mhm.
right? What works for me is not necessarily going to work for the next person, because it always depends where are the things, where are the chinks in the armor, right? So what I would say is try different things. I really like, there's a company called Troscriptions. They have a supplement called TroZ, and it's a very interesting supplement in the sense that it uses tiny amounts of melatonin, very small amounts of melatonin, but it also has tiny amounts of a certain type of CBD, CBN. It's got, I think it's got magnolia bark extract. Again, a tiny amount. It's a supplement company that creates these very effective stacks, and they use tiny amounts of everything, but synergistically they add up to a big effect. So Trozy is a really good one. They have another one called Tromune that is only one ingredient. It's cordycepin, which is very, very powerful for immune support, but it's actually great for sleep. Then Bioptimizers, who makes that magnesium breakthrough that I was talking about, they also have a couple of sleep formulas. What's cool about those guys is you can buy this. They have two different formulas for sleep. You can try them out, and if they don't work for you, they actually will give you your money back, because they also recognize that the same thing's not going to work for every single person. And then there's another, actually really, I mean, honestly, I could talk all day long about sleep supplements. There's so many different formulas. But another one that really stands out for me right now is there's a company called Fusionary Formulas. She makes a incredible turmeric, two very powerful turmeric supplements, but she also has these sleep gummies that I love. There's all these different things in I mean, as you can imagine, there's many things in my cabinet. And I will say that some of them work better for some people than others. Sometimes they don't work at all for certain people. So
Mhm.
it's really a little bit of trial and error. The trick is to find and pick companies that you trust. And very many of those companies will offer you your money back if their supplement doesn't work for you. So,
Exactly.
and I have to say that for sleep, if you're not really if you don't have some kind of a breath work practice or meditation practice, or, it could be like, there's a really cool app called New Calm. If you need to find that tool that's going to work for you to down regulate your nervous system so that you can get into a state where you can actually allow yourself to fall asleep and
Mhm.
get good sleep.
And ladies, don't forget progesterone, micronized
Hmm.
progesterone. That's a good one too.
Yeah.
So definitely talk to your practitioner. Someone is asking about liver detox. Again, so many different companies and brands on liver detox. What's your thought on that?
So
Recommendation?
yeah, I mean, the other company that does a really nice job with liver support supplements is a company called Quicksilver. He has a protocol called Push Catch, and it's one supplement that stimulates the liver, and then the other supplement, which is actually an activated charcoal complex that will bind the toxins or
Remove
whatever
them.
that have been released, and then help to that'll sequester them and bind them and move them out of the body. So I'd say Quicksilver has some really, really great supplements. He's got really good bitters. Like, there's a lot of he is Dr. Chris Shade, and I would say that they have some really nice products for liver support, in addition to what I was saying about Level Up Health earlier.
Someone was asking about gut detoxification too, or for, I think, dysbiosis. Any protocols or supplements, brands?
Yeah, I think on dysbiosis, when you have microbiome imbalances, the most important thing is to work with a practitioner who's got a test that they really like, that they're going to look and see what's happening in your microbiome, right?
All the
If
details.
Yeah, because it could be, you can have an overgrowth of things, you could have a deficiency of stuff, you could not be making short chain fatty acids, so then tributyrin will be very helpful. But you need to understand what is happening in what are the imbalances in your particular microbiome, and then we can start to make recommendations about, whether it's probiotics. I mean, I really like spore probiotics, so companies like Microbiome Labs or Thrive Health, or there's another really great, very powerful company on the microbiome called the Gut Institute by Dr. Grace Liu. But microbiome, more than anything, is really, really, really personalized. So you really have to do the testing to find out what it is that's happening in your gut before you start throwing stuff at it. And that's something we see a lot.
We see a lot, and I see many women again in midlife with SIBO. That is very common. So you have to definitely work, and please do not start taking supplements or probiotics without knowing what's going on in your body.
Yeah,
That's
and I
very
mean
important.
that's why I didn't mention progesterone for sleep, because I think that's in the domain of
Yeah.
you need to get a test done to find out, are you, and very people run around talking about estrogen dominance. Sometimes it's not too much estrogen, it's too little progesterone.
The imbalance.
So we just need to bring that progesterone back up again. But that is so personalized and dependent on testing that I don't like to say, go get some progesterone and take it and see what happens. I mean,
Yeah.
there are people that are more generous that way. I personally, especially when it comes to hormones, I really like people to be getting tested and working with a practitioner.
Someone is saying about diabetes type 2. I'm on metformin and I have wake up out of my sleep every 2 hours to pee. What can I do?
I think what you can do is work with a practitioner who's going to help to reverse that type 2 diabetes. Like, here's the thing, type 2 diabetes is reversible. But it's gonna require you to do some work. You're gonna have to change your diet. You're gonna have to change your lifestyle. But here's the thing about type 2 diabetes that your doctor will never tell you, and that is that you can reverse it. It's a lifestyle condition. Type 1 diabetes is different, but type 2 diabetes is very different. And, if you're getting up to pee every 2 hours, there's a possibility that your blood sugar is not under control the way that you think it is, or the way your doctor thinks it is. And either, I if it was me and I had type 2 diabetes, I'd be really leaning into what can I do to reverse it, or at least get it under control better.
And someone's talking about on progesterone, 200 milligrams. She's okay falling asleep but awake at 4 a.m. So there's so many other things that may be wrong. Yeah, your insulin, cortisol. So definitely, again, I think we should check those very important factors too. What are your thoughts on that
Yeah,
question?
I agree. Like, if you're waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, how do you feel when you wake up? Are you waking up with a pounding heart? That could be a cortisol spike. Are you waking up and you're famished? That could be a blood sugar drop. Maybe wear a continuous glucose monitor for a couple of weeks, because that'll give you insight in what's your blood sugar doing at that hour. So, we always need to understand why is the person waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning? Is there a physical reason? Is it the cortisol or the blood sugar that might be waking them up? And then you can take certain steps, or maybe, again, without knowing more about the person, it's very hard to say. You could try some of these sleep formulas. Maybe you just need something that's going to help to keep you down, but it's very hard to give a fix without having a full picture. So
Yes, I totally appreciate what you're saying. What mineral salt do you recommend with no microplastics? That's interesting.
That's a good one. So there's a couple of really good ones out there right now. There's Oryx salt, Oryx. So that's desert salt. No microplastics in that one. I think there's another one. I have a bag of it downstairs. I'm picturing it in my mind and I don't remember what it's called. It's like a dark blue bag. Um, it might even say mineral salt on it. I know that the Oryx is quite good. So ultimately, whatever salt you buy, you want to make sure they're testing for microplastics. That's a really good question.
Mm.
And we have to, it's like even things like protein powders. We have to make sure that they're testing for heavy metals. So there's a company that I work with that I use called Puori, Puori. It's super clean. There's only 5 ingredients in the bag, and they actually test every single batch for impurities and heavy metals. And so when we're taking supplements, we want to make sure, even if it's protein powders, whatever the case may be,
Yes.
we want to make sure that the companies that we trust are trustworthy. And the ones that are trustworthy are going to be willing to answer the hard questions about, are they doing the testing? You know, if you're using a supplement, like let's say a sleep powder that has chocolate in it, there's a whole bunch of them out there. Are they testing their chocolate for heavy metals? Because chocolate is notoriously high in heavy metals. So definitely um, be willing to ask the questions.
Yeah. So what about the protein powder you mentioned? So
Same.
what again? So which do you know any brands that are the
So the
good
one,
ones?
yeah. So the one that I really like is Puori,
Okay, so they
Puori. So
Mhm.
they test. And interestingly enough, there's a big study that came out not too long ago that showed that the vegan protein powders were the biggest offenders
Mhm.
of heavy metals, which is a bit distressing. But Puori is whey protein. So, and it's very good quality. And it's what I like about Puori is that it's not very sweet.
Mhm.
So if you want to make it a little bit sweeter, you can always add a little bit of fruit, or you can add, I really like using trehalose as a sugar because it's an extract. It's actually one of the sugars that comes from honey and it doesn't spike blood sugar. It's got a lot of interesting benefits. But also recalibrating our taste buds, like learning to consume things that are less sweet is a
Mhm.
really good
Yeah.
strategy.
Someone is mentioning about Aussie trace minerals.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
yeah, a really
That's a
great mineral product.
salt,
I
or is
think
that a
so.
mineral
Trace
supplement?
minerals.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, so there's another product that I really really like that supports electrolytes and also trace minerals is a company called Beam Minerals. Um, and what's nice about them is their supplement is based on fulvic and humic acids, and so these are natural compounds. The fulvic acid helps to get things into the cell
Mhm.
and the humic acid helps to bind toxins and remove them. So that's a really, really great supplement. If people are interested, and it's not pills, you're drinking like an ounce of each of those two. You might drink the electrolytes in the morning and drink the humic acid one at night, the dark one, because it can be calming and it kind of helps support detoxification through the night. Because of course we know as we're sleeping, there's a lot going on, and a lot of it is repair work.
Yeah, a very important part of our detox happens when we sleep. Someone was asking how they can see you or make an appointment.
Yeah,
Do you see?
yeah. So, so I don't do that. I do have a membership community. If anybody's interested, it's if you go to my website, natniddam.com, you can there's a membership, there's information about the membership community, and I do live Q&As in that community, and also lots of really smart practitioners in there. So it's
Mm,
a very interesting space and safe space that people can come in, and very often they'll get support, or we'll connect them with a practitioner near them if that's what they're looking for.
mm.
Um, but I think people really enjoy it because I also get like podcast guests that come in there and do live Q&As, and it's a neat space, if you will.
Someone is talking about microplastics in
Hmm.
bottle. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that microplastics are obviously a growing issue in our environment. I personally use in my house right now, I'm using a reverse osmosis system, like it's a 5-step reverse osmosis system under my sink with a remineralizer. Um, Obviously, avoiding bottled water is ideal. So if we can have these systems available to us, there's another system called Zero Water, and it's like a big thing, and it's got filters in there. And if you pour tap water into the top, and then the three filters will capture all the different products. And I'm pretty sure those filters are designed to capture microplastics. So you want to filter your water, and drinking bottled water, sadly, is not, it's often not the best answer. It can be better than drinking tap water in certain situations, but also because we don't know those plastic bottles, if they've been superheated in transport, like you just don't know where it's coming from. So admittedly, it's one of those challenges we have to kind of deal with.
Exactly. And then a lot of questions about intermittent fasting. So your thoughts on that? Which type of intermittent fasting is better recommended or more studied?
Yeah. So back to the person who lives in an apartment building. So if you live in an apartment building, look into the Zero Water system. It's a portable system, so you can use it. Take it with you when you leave. You don't have to install anything, which I know a lot of apartment buildings have rules against that. When it comes to fasting, I think that fasting is probably one of the most powerful interventions we can access for longevity and for our health. But as women going through menopause and perimenopause, sometimes your body is under a lot of stress. And so you have to be mindful that you're not overdoing the intermittent fasting. Like what we see is women, they kind of lose their appetite almost. And it's this paradox where they don't eat enough, and they are actually skipping breakfast, which is adding more stress to their bodies, where maybe for menopausal women, the best way to do it is to have a good protein breakfast within an hour of waking up in the morning. If you're going to skip a meal, maybe skip the best meal to skip is dinner, right? But it depends. It definitely depends. If you're to me, eat your last meal at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and now you can get that fasting window. But you have to make sure that your body is resilient enough to cope. But there's a lot of power in fasting. One of the things I've been talking about lately, and I'm actually going to be leading an online fast in 2 weeks, the week of March 16th or 17th. And that's with a company called Prolon, and it's a fast mimicking diet. So what's interesting about that fast is it's a 5-day fast, but you're actually eating some food every single day. They deliver a kit to your house that has your food for every single day of the 5 days. So you don't have to think, you don't have to cook. It's a total brain break. And the research, and there's like 20 years of research behind this thing, shows that this 5-day fast, when repeated a couple of times, they suggest that you start with 3 in a row. So you do one week of every 4 to 6 weeks for 3 months. They've shown that it helps to lower inflammation. It helps to reduce insulin resistance. It can help to even lower biological age. It's good for cardiovascular health. Like, it's actually a very powerful tool, and it makes it easier for people to access fasting, because a 5-day water fast can be too much, right? For a lot of people, and it's just not accessible, and it may not even be healthy. And someone who, let's say the person who is here who has type 2 diabetes, they have a specific program for people who might have a medical condition, where they will work much more closely with them to guide them through the fast, and even give them different elements to the diet.
Especially a lot of people are on medications, especially with diabetes. So
Yeah.
one has to be very careful going through. Someone asked about the water filter. Install the.
I hear installed a pure water filter, but I don't let my grandparents use it. I think that I don't know the pure water filter myself. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make with water filters is they don't change the filter often enough.
Yeah.
So if you're going to use any kind of water filter, make sure that you're aware, does it need to be changed every month, every 3 months, and put it in your phone, put it on your calendar, because what happens is people don't, this happens a lot with fridge filters.
Yes.
People don't change them, and now they become moldy or they become toxic, and now it becomes a negative instead of a positive. So I don't know that much about your pure filter, but I actually think it's a pretty good filter. But I would say that if you haven't changed the filter part of the filter recently, then you're probably smart not to let your grandson drink the water from it right now. You probably shouldn't be either yourself.
One last question about trackers, like continuous blood sugar monitor. What are your thoughts about wearing them and how beneficial are for people, public?
I think continuous glucose monitors are fantastic. I
Mhm.
think that they give people so much good information about what their personal response is to different foods. You may notice that your blood sugar spikes when you get stressed out. You may notice that it drops in the middle of the night when you're waking up. Like, it is such a powerful source of information. You may notice that when you eat a banana, your blood sugar actually stays quite steady,
Mhm.
right? Versus another person who eats a banana and becomes pre-diabetic. So I think that continuous glucose monitors are just, I think they're the best invention, honestly. And in the States, they've made them a lot easier for people to access, which I think is really, really fantastic.
Mhm.
The wearable monitors, like the rings and the wristbands, I think they're good information. Make sure that you're using it not as a judgment for yourself, but make sure that you're using it as a source of feedback, right? So when I take magnesium at night before bed, does my sleep change? Is one capsule enough? Do I need two capsules? Maybe I need three capsules, right? Personally, it's three for me. Three is my magic number, but I'm not you. You might do really well with two or with one. So it really allows you to kind of customize things to you, right? I think another really powerful thing, if I can offer one last thing before we go, is if you're not sure about your diet, use an app like Chronometer, right? Where you would enter everything that you eat and drink for, let's say, a week. And it's going to give you insight. Like, are you getting enough protein? Are you eating too much sugar? Is there too much inflammatory fat in your food? So it's going to get, because we all think, or most people think, that they're eating a healthy diet, and they think that they're getting enough protein, and they think that they're not eating sugar. And shockingly, they start tracking their food and they're like, oh my God, or moms with little kids, and if they're honest and they're putting everything in that app that is going into their mouth, like, the half sandwich that your little girl didn't eat, or the cookie that your son was left over from his lunch, or the jelly beans that are sitting in the living room or by the cash register, all of these things, they all add up. And we don't realize how impactful the little things can be and how easy it is to remove them and to see a massive shift.
One last question. Oh, people are
Okay.
often 1,000 kilocalorie. Yeah.
People are often 1,000 kilocalories on their perceived yeah,
Yeah.
no, for
Yeah.
sure. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's shocking, right? So
So,
definitely, I think it's one of the most powerful and shocking things that I've had people do when I was working with clients. I lost a number of people that came back to me and I'm like, oh my God, I can't
so
believe.
is this an app that you were just talking about?
Chronometer is an app.
Okay.
Chronometer without an H. Cronom, like mother, ETER. There's MyFitnessPal is another one. Like, there's a whole bunch of them.
Ah, who's this?
Ah,
Ah, thank you. You're so kind.
you're
One
very.
last thing. I mean, we don't want to let you go, but I know you have so much to do about creatine. So we hear so much last year everywhere, creatine, creatine. So tell me, what are your thoughts on that? How to use it if you're recommending or you like it?
Yeah. I think creatine is the great unsung hero.
Mm.
And I recommend it I use it every single day. What people, I actually did a whole solo podcast episode on creatine. So if anybody's really interested, I think I talk about 10 different things you might not have known about creatine. One of the big things people don't realize about creatine is it's actually very good for mitochondria. It's also very good for brain. So it's not, you know, people associate creatine with
Muscles.
muscles and bodybuilders. Yes, good for
Mm-hmm.
muscles, but also very, very good for so many other different systems in the body. The one that I use is by that company Level Up Health that does the liver complex. And the reason why I use their creatine is because they have an ingredient in there called GAA, which is a creatine precursor that increases intracellular uptake of creatine by 8.5 times. So you end up not having to take as much and get more bang for your buck. Plus, I think there's like 50 servings in a tub. So it is definitely, I'm going to prepare you guys. It is more expensive than the creatine you're going to get at the corner store. But it also has methylation support in there. It's got go to the website, read about it. It is a beautifully formulated supplement. The only thing about it is it has a bit of a sour taste. So you won't be able to do what I used to do with my creatine. I used to put it in my coffee. So now instead I mix it with my essential amino acids and it makes them a little bit sour. So it makes them taste better. But I think creatine is a fantastic supplement.
Yeah, I love it. I take it every day with my smoothie and protein powder. But some people have bloating with it or some abdominal discomfort. But this one that you're mentioning maybe has less side
You don't need
effects.
as
Yeah.
much, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and definitely with creatine, if you think you're going to have, if you do, or you're worried about having gastric effects, start at a lower dose. You know,
Mm-hmm.
start with like, you know, I think a scoop is 5 grams,
Yeah.
but maybe start at half a scoop,
Mhm.
and then work your way up slowly from there.
Amazing talk. Great.
Thank you.
Love that. It was
Thank you so
great.
much.
So much information, and hopefully we're going to repeat this
Oh,
another time more.
good. Well, thank you so much
It
for
was
having me. I
lovely.
really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Amazing. Great talk. Have a lovely day, and thank you everyone for being here with us today.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much.